Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
Marcela was an emergency doctor. At the moment she was having a rest with nurse Zenaida and driver Vasco. They were drinking hot coffee from a thermos. The shift was coming to an end, with only 2 hours left. But before the colleagues could take a sip of the aromatic drink, the dispatcher called and said, "Attention, duty medical team, prepare to depart. Address, Outid de Arriba 98. There's a wedding in a restaurant, and one of the guests suddenly fell ill. According to the caller's description, it seems like he has an allergy." Marcela cursed to herself. Here we go again, I hate these kind of calls. They drink excessively, anything they can get their hands on, and then it's either a stabbing, a fight, or something even worse. But there was nothing to be done, work was work, and the team quickly rushed to the palsy of the incident. It was evident that the restaurant was booked by wealthy people. There was a doorman at the entrance, and expensive cars filled the parking lot. Upon seeing the emergency team, the doorman let them in without question but warned them. "Be careful in there, it's Blanco's daughter's wedding. Our well-known millionaire. You guys, take extra caution, he has an explosive temper, even I'm afraid of him." The driver replied, "You know, we've gotten used to it. It's not a job, it's a constant adventure." The hall was stuffy, fashionable music was playing, and the guests were drinking and having fun. Only in the far corner, on 3 stacked chairs, there lay some intoxicated individual. Several people and a frightened waiter were bustling around him. The poor guy was struggling to breathe, his eyes bulging, and his tongue literally hanging out of his mouth. He seemed to be of blue color already instead of the reddish one. Marcela understood everything immediately, it was an anaphylactic shock. Apparently, an allergic reaction had occurred to some type of alcohol or appetizer. She briskly shouted, "Get away from him! Open a window and let me get to the patient." She removed the constricting tie from him, unbuttoned his shirt collar, and Nurse Zenaida helped her prepare medication in a syringe, which they administered to the patient intravenously. Then she brought ammonia to the patient's nose. He immediately started to regain consciousness. After about 10 minutes, he felt significantly better and began to breathe normally. The man thanked the medical professionals, saying, "Thank God, I'm alive. I thought I was suffocating. Thank you, gentlemen. But what was that all about? Why did I feel so awful? I've never felt this bad before. You most likely have alcohol allergy. So try not to drink any alcoholic beverages for the rest of the evening. Otherwise, it could end fatally next time. This is not a joke." The millionaire, Sergio Blanco, started thanking the emergency team and tried to slip them a wad of large bills in front of everyone, showcasing his significance and generosity. Marcela immediately objected. "No, it's unnecessary, please put that away. We're just doing our job." Suddenly, out of the corner of her eye, she glanced at the groom, and she felt sick to her stomach. Could it be Demetrio? It can't be. It's his spitting image. The hair, the hairstyle. Oh my God. It's been so many years. He looks good, such a scoundrel. So, he's marrying the millionaire's daughter. She approached the young man and greeted him. "Hello, Demetrio, congratulations. A profitable match." He looked at her with surprise and a detached manner. "Probably you took me for someone else. I'm not Demetrio, my name is Ives. We've never met before. But thank you anyway, I appreciate it." Marcela was flustered and thought to herself, what a jerk. Apparently, he finds it pleasant. He's a liar. We had such a romance, such love, and now he's making me look like a fool. It's outrageous. She became angry and addressed the groom again. "Why are treating me like this, Demetrio? How could I have mistaken you? You know me perfectly well. Why are you lying? Or were you so intimidated that you're afraid to admit it?" At that moment, the millionaire rushed over and decided to intervene. "What's going on here? The person clearly told you that he doesn't know you. Have you done your job? I think you did. So, goodbye, you know where the way out is. The guests started turning their heads towards them, but Marcela couldn't be stopped. It was just her character. She hated lies and was determined to prove, no matter what, that she wasn't lying. The woman shouted in indignation, almost screaming. I know Demetrio perfectly well. We've been dating. There should be a noticeable mole on his neck. Right there, just below the shirt collar. And she attempted to peek under his shirt. The millionaire became furious. Get this crazy woman out of here. The last thing we need is that she ruins my daughter's wedding. Security, come here. Throw her out. No one has the right to spoil the celebration. A commotion ensued. The groom swore that he was seeing this woman for the first time. Zenaida was frightened to the point of death and pressed herself against the wall. Only the driver, Vasco, quickly figured out the situation, rushed forward, and pulled Marcela's sleeve forcefully. Excuse us, the woman should have mistaken. It happens to anyone. A simple mix-up. We have to go. All the best. Take care. And they rushed out of the restaurant and quickly got into the ambulance. Astonished, Vasco began reproaching Marcela. Marcela, what was that all about? It's as if you were obsessed. Why did you tell all this to the groom? I hope that rich man won't complain to anyone. The woman sighed, regained her composure slightly, and suddenly burst into loud sobs. Because he's lying about everything. We had such a love in our youth. We even wanted to get married. And now he pretended not to know me. He claimed he's not Demetrio. Even though he doesn't have a mole anymore, but he used to, I remember it clearly. I don't understand anything. Although you're right, I had no right to behave like that and expose all of you. I'm sorry. Zenaida exclaimed. Well, what a situation. Maybe it's really not him? Probably he just looks similar? He couldn't possibly use a false name in front of all the guests, could he? We need to figure this out. The shift ended, and Marcela, feeling sad, walked home. She entered her apartment. The cat missed her so much and started rubbing against her legs, purring and seeking attention. The woman picked him up, stroked him, scratched behind his ear, and filled his bowl with food. Then she sadly said aloud, My love, my dear. You're the only one who loves me and waits for me. No one else needs me. She took out old photographs from the cabinet and began going through them. Here they were with Demetrio in the countryside, grilling meat with friends. How long ago that was. It's incredible how much the guy she mistook for her ex-fiancé today resembled him. They were almost identical, like two peas in a pod. Marcela lay down on the couch, covered herself with a blanket, and wanted to take a nap after sleepless hours at work. She was simply exhausted. But it wasn't meant to be. She couldn't fall asleep. She kept reminiscing about her youth and grieving over what could never be regained. Marcela grew up in a family of medical professionals. They lived comfortably, never denying anything to their only daughter. From early childhood, their hospitable home often hosted guests. They drank coffee together and celebrated all holidays. Of course, most of them were somehow connected to the field of medicine. Therefore, Marcela couldn't imagine any other profession for herself. After high school, she enrolled in medical school right away, on her first attempt, thanks to her parents' year-long tutoring in all subjects, and she graduated with flying colors. She lived in her own apartment, so she didn't experience the true student life. Her parents always taught her that it's not the time for the boys and affairs. The important thing was to get a good education and build a career, and everything else would come later. But youth only comes once, and the girl desperately wanted to love and be loved. Outwardly, she was attractive, with a cute face and curly chestnut hair, except that she was a bit overweight. She was always very self-conscious and had terrible insecurities. She even tried to go on diets. She didn't have a crowd of admirers, but it seemed that all the guys preferred slim girls with long legs. Nuria, a midwife from the maternity hospital, would sometimes visit Marcela's parents for advice or just to chat. She lived with her son, Demetrio, who was the same age as Marcela, and one day she came over with him. That's how the young people met. Unlike the calm and home-loving Marcela, Demetrio was the neighborhood's troublemaker. Friends always surrounded him, and they would sit in the gazebo next to the house in the evenings, listening to music and playing the guitar until late. Perhaps opposites attract, as it is the law of nature, and that's why they were drawn to each other. The guy wasn't bothered by the girl's weight. He called her his sweet candy. At first, they were friends, and Marcela helped Demetrio with his studies while he introduced her to the street life. They started appearing together in social gatherings, and he introduced her to his friends. Songs about love and parting, starry nights, bouquets of flowers from a neighbor's garden, and Marcela, without even realizing it, fell deeply and irrevocably in love. Demetrio was her superhero. So brave, romantic, and daring. He could easily defend his opinion and argue with anyone. It was his impulsive and explosive character that eventually led to the end of their relationship. Marcela's parents were very displeased with this suitor. Her mother lectured her day and night. "My dear, what have you found in this deadbeat? Demetrio has undoubtedly an attractive appearance, no doubt about it, but what about the other stuff? They live in poverty with his mother, always short of money. And instead of finding a decent job and helping his mother, he spends his time riding his motorcycle and playing the guitar. He's so irresponsible. And he drags you along with him. I don't like any of this. What kind of future do you have with him? You should look closer at your colleagues, interns. There are more serious guys there." But Marcela would just brush it off. "Oh, Mom. Stop it. Demetrio and I love each other. He's amazing. I don't need anyone else, got it? And stop lecturing me about morality. I'm already an adult, by the way." One day, Demetrio invited Marcela to spend the weekend outside the city with a group of friends, by the river, with tents. The girl was thrilled, trying on numerous swimsuits and outfits, worrying about whether they would accept her, twirling and spinning in front of the mirror, eagerly awaiting the weekend. The picnic was a great success. Everyone had fun, swimming, sunbathing, grilling meat, and in the evening, they sat by the bonfire until midnight, singing songs and playing the guitar, toasting with glasses of wine. Demetrio held Marcela close to him, then gave her his jacket so she wouldn't get cold, and suddenly whispered, "Come with me, my sweetie, I'll show you something. You've never seen such beauty before. It's a surprise." Demetrio led the girl deeper into the forest. She was scared but also very curious. The tall trees rustled, the wind howled, and suddenly a light drizzle started falling. They arrived at a clearing where a makeshift shelter made of branches was set up. The guy mysteriously gestured for her to come inside. It was warm and dry inside, with a warm blanket on the ground, and it smelled of herbs. Suddenly, Demetrio passionately kissed Marcela and whispered, "I prepared this specifically for us in advance, so we could escape from everyone. Isn't it amazing? It's like being on a deserted island. Just nature and the starry sky. Come to me, my love." And it was here that their first intimacy took place. Then they spent a long time gazing at the stars through the branches of the shelter and embracing each other. There seemed to be no happier people on earth. The relationship between the young couple developed tumultuously. They would argue and make up, mostly due to the boy's hot-tempered nature. He could hurt her deeply with hurtful words said in the heat of the moment, and Marcela took it all too much to heart and couldn't easily take away the hurt. They broke up due to a foolish incident. Marcela was invited to a class reunion. Demetrio was very jealous and didn't want to let his fiancée go there. She managed to persuade him, but only for a short while. The celebration was in full swing, with toasts, dances, and competitions. Demetrio couldn't resist and decided to go and pick up Marcela earlier than they had agreed. He entered the cafe at the exact moment when Marcela was performing a lively lambada dance with a classmate. The classmate held her by the waist, and she was moving her hips. But it was just a contest, nothing more. Demetrio lost control, misunderstood everything. He made a scene and said terrible things to his fiancée. Marcela was deeply hurt because she was humiliated in front of everyone for no reason at all. Just for a simple dance. And that's how they broke up. Both stubbornly refused to admit their guilt and reconcile. Later, to spite Marcela, Demetrio started dating with a new girl just to intentionally hurt her even more. How she cried and suffered. She only found peace when her ex-fiancé moved to another city to live with his mother. Years went by, but Marcela couldn't forget her Demetrio. He remained deeply rooted in her heart because no one can forget their first love. Marcela found a job as a doctor at an emergency station and lived in her own apartment, which her parents bought for her. She even got married at one point. Seeing her daughter's pain, her mother was determined to shape her destiny and convinced Marcela to meet her young colleague, Santos, a dentist. He was dignified, proper, seemed calm, and exuded confidence in the future. Marcela resisted for a long time, but reluctantly agreed, as there was no one else on the horizon. There was no passion or even a fraction of the emotion she once felt for Demetrio. It was like a calm sea. Soon, they got married out of inertia, but their married life didn't go smoothly from the beginning. What seemed like tranquility and dignity to her turned out to be fussiness and indifference. Santos loved himself above all else. He would look at himself in the mirror 100 times, dress in fashionable clothes, and was a terrible perfectionist, a mama's boy, what to say. Marcela's mother regularly added fuel to the fire, insinuating that something was wrong with her, as she couldn't get pregnant despite the passing time. Their married life reminded Marcela of a tedious routine with no end in sight. They hardly even communicated. Their schedules were different, and there was nothing to talk about. All Santos cared about was what would be served for dinner, whether his shoes were polished, and if his shirts were ironed. He couldn't care less about emotions and feelings. One day, when he once again brought up the topic of infertility and offended her, she couldn't take it anymore. "Listen, Santos, why do you even want children? You don't love me at all, only yourself." He wasn't the least bit perturbed and raised an eyebrow, replying, "Mom says that there should be a child in each family. I trust her. Everyone lives that way. If you can't have children, just say so. Why am I wasting my time with you then? It's not rational." Marcela suddenly burst into hysterical laughter. "You're right, Santos, there's no need to waste time with me. I want a divorce." "You're absolutely right." And so, quietly and peacefully, they divorced, completely devoid of emotions, and went their own ways, like two ships in the sea, wishing each other happiness in their personal lives. Marcela even breathed a sigh of relief when she started living alone again. It was better this way than with that miser and bore. This time, the woman had a serious conversation with her mother. "That's it, Mommy, no more affairs or suitors for me. I've had enough. I can't build a happy family without love, that's just how I am. Apparently, I'm destined to spend my life alone." One day, as she was walking home from work early in the morning, Marcela heard a faint squeaking noise near a trash bin. Unable to resist, she looked to see what was happening. Something was moving inside a bag. Overcoming her disgust, she pulled it out of the trash and untied it. Inside was a tiny, frail kitten. Marcela's heart squeezed with pity for the little creature. Without hesitation, she carried the poor thing home. And that's how she got Esponjoso, her cat. She nursed him with a dropper, fed him on schedule, and spent a long time treating his eyes and getting rid of fleas. He grew up to be a true Siamese beauty, deeply devoted to his owner and alleviating her loneliness. While Marcela lay there contemplating everything, her beloved pet curled up beside her, purring to comfort his owner. Finally, the woman fell asleep. The next day, Marcela decided that she couldn't go on living as before until she knew the whole truth. That guy who resembled Demetrio awakened feelings in her that had long been forgotten and buried deep within her soul. His face was constantly before her eyes. She found a newspaper article about a recent wedding and discovered that the groom's name was Ives Nieto. Well, the rest was just a matter of technique. She went to the passport office, her acquaintance worked there, and obtained all the information about this person. It turned out he wasn't a millionaire, but he grew up in comfort. His parents were middle-class business owners with a small confectionery factory where he worked as a manager. Marcela gathered her courage, found the photos of her and Demetrio together at home, and disguised herself as a customer to visit their production facility. She easily found Ives' office and walked in. "Good day. My name is Marcela. Do you remember when I mistook you for another man at the wedding and there was a horrible scandal? I'm not crazy, I hope you don't think so. Please listen to me. Here, take a look at these photos." And she handed him the photos. The man looked at them attentively, and his face changed immediately. He was also puzzled. Indeed, there's some mystery here. The guy really looks exactly like me. Like two peas in a pod. But how is that possible? And who is your fiancé in this photo? Where is he now? What family did he grow up in? I even, mistakenly, thought back then at the wedding that you were insane. But now I completely understand your emotions. Did you love him very much? Marcela sighed and began to tell her story. He is my first and only love in life. His name is Demetrio. His mother was a midwife, and she knew my parents. It was at our home when I first met him. Demetrio was passionate, generous, sincere, but also very quick-tempered and terribly jealous. We had a silly argument once because he was jealous of me dancing with a classmate at a class reunion. We broke up in a foolish way. Then he and his mother moved somewhere, I think to a neighboring town. I never met him again after that. It's been many years since then, I've been married and divorced, but he's the only one in my heart. When I saw you at the wedding, it was as if I lost my mind, everything in my soul was stirred up. Please, understand me, people can't look so much alike. There's some secret here. I couldn't sleep all night and thought about all sorts of things. So, I decided to talk to you personally. I thought maybe you know something but are afraid to talk about it. After all, everyone knows that your father-in-law has a very tough character. I've pondered. You're probably right. I have an idea. I'll talk to my parents. Maybe they know something. You mentioned that your fiancé, Demetrio, lived with his mother. But I definitely have both a father and a mother, and they've never been involved in medicine in any way. Leave me your phone number, and I'll call you back. And about my father-in-law, you're right about that. I hope Susanna didn't inherit his character. They bid each other farewell warmly and friendly, and Marcela hurried off to her shift. She was afraid of being late. Meanwhile, Ives decided to visit his parents after work for a serious conversation. His mother was busy in the kitchen, while his father flicked through channels, searching for news on the television. When they saw their son, they were overjoyed and rushed to embrace him. His father happily said, "What's up, son? Why have you decided to visit us in the middle of the week? Or is something the matter?" Ives decided not to beat around the bush and asked directly, "Mom, do you remember at my wedding when that medical woman mistook me for someone else and a scandal happened? Well, take a look at this photo. This is that woman's fiancé. But he's the spitting image of me. Can you explain it?" Valentina lowered her gaze, sighed, paused for a moment, and then began. "Son. Well, what can I say? So many years have passed, and I thought I would take this secret to the grave. Somewhere out there in the world, you have a twin brother. I gave birth to both of you with a 1-minute difference, 2 boys. But as soon as I finished giving birth, a fire broke out at the hospital. There was panic everywhere. They were evaluating us, transferring us to another hospital. In the chaos, one of the twins went missing. They only brought you to me. We argued with your father, filed a police report, there were investigations, and the hospital director was fired, but what was it any good? They never found the baby. I grieved for a long time, couldn't come to terms with how it happened. Where's my blood son? I thought maybe he perished in the fire, and the doctors covered it up. It's a dark story. Over time, life went on, and we couldn't bring ourselves to tell you about your brother. We didn't want to burden your life needlessly. And now, it has come to this. Ives was shocked by what he heard. He was indignant. But how? Why didn't you continue to search for the child? Maybe he was wandering, hungry, in need of help? No, I won't leave it like this. I will pursue this to the end and find out where my true brother is. Nowadays, there are so many possibilities, thanks to the internet, social media, and private detectives. Probably, there's a chance we can find him. After leaving his parents' place, Ives immediately called Marcela and arranged to meet at a nearby cafe. Inside him, a sea of emotions raged. Marcela was the only one who could understand him at this moment. Ives caught himself thinking that he really liked this charming, smiling woman with curly hair. Her curvaceous figure didn't spoil anything, on the contrary, it added a touch of spice. Subconsciously, he compared her to his wife, Susanna, a tall, platinum blonde. On the surface, Susanna had it all, but there was something unreal, doll-like about her. How could he have ever liked that just a little while ago? And today, he waited for Marcela and saw her from a distance. She seemed slightly out of breath, indicating that she was in a hurry. Her cheeks were flushed, and she waved her hand from afar. He was charmed by her warm and genuine smile. But he immediately scolded himself, thinking, "What are you thinking about, Ives? Your wife is waiting you at home. It's your honeymoon after all, and here you are drooling over another woman." Marcela asked excitedly, "Good day, Ives. So, did you find out anything?" Ives shared all the news with her about his brother, the fire, and his emotions. Can you imagine, Marcela? How could they do that? My parents. Why didn't they tell me it earlier? Something could have been done, an attempt to find my brother. We could have been friends for now. How can I find him now? I'm deeply interested in this too. Any ideas? Marcela also shared some news. You know, I asked my mom as well, and she inquired with her colleagues at the hospital, and they seem to have found out where Demetrio and his mother went. It's a neighboring town. That's all I've learned so far. I'm too busy with work to be a detective. I'm on call day and night. I can't figure out what to do. And then I've had an idea. You're right, he exclaimed. I can hire a private detective. I have enough resources for that. Gather all the information, photos, and we'll go to an agency together. Regardless, professionals will find out this faster. We now have one goal, to find your fiancé and my long-lost brother. So they did exactly that. I've hired an excellent professional who had been working in the field of locating missing people for over 20 years and knew all the intricacies of the trade. After a couple of weeks, the detective, Pero Mendez, called them and arranged a meeting at the agency. Ives picked up Marcela in his car, and they set off. Marcela noticed that Ives seemed deeply upset, gloomy, and uncommunicative. She asked, concerned, "Is something wrong? You look very sad. It doesn't seem like you're enjoying your honeymoon at all." Ives replied quietly, "I may have rushed into this marriage, Marcela. My parents insisted when they found out Susanna is a Blanco daughter. They thought it would benefit our business, there would be a lucrative alliance. While we were dating, everything was fun and exciting, parties, clubs, trips abroad. But after the wedding, I realized that Susanna had been living that lifestyle all along. She doesn't know how to do anything around the house and doesn't want to get to know. But that's not the main issue. It turns out Susanna takes birth control pills and doesn't want to have children. To be honest, I find it outrageous. I was certain that every woman dreams of a family and children. I hope she said it rashly, without thinking otherwise." Marcela shook her head and responded, "Well, that's not cool at all. But don't worry, you're just getting used to each other. It's always difficult at first. Although, to be honest, I'm not the best advisor in that regard. I couldn't preserve my first love, couldn't make it work with my ex-husband. So now I live with my cat, Esponjoso. Children didn't work out either. God didn't give Sue an opportunity to me. So now my cat is my solace, at least he will never hurt me. Finally, they arrived at the agency. The detective spread out some photos and papers on the table and began briefing them on the situation. What can I tell you, gentlemen, this is a complex and convoluted case. Especially when it comes to you and your brother. It's an old and dark incident that was clearly attempted to be forgotten. It was a challenge to uncover the details. The incident did happen. A newborn baby disappeared without a trace during a fire at the maternity ward. But I managed to find out that at the time, your fiancé's mother, the same midwife Nuria, was working at that hospital. I also managed to locate her longtime acquaintance, a former neighbor from her old apartment, who revealed that Nuria was childless and her marriage ended early because of it. Immediately after the fire took place, she took sick leave and abruptly resigned. The most crucial detail is that she sold her nice apartment in the city center and moved unexpectedly to the outskirts, into a small room. Don't you find that strange? A couple of years later, the two women accidentally bumped into each other at the sale in a shopping mall. Nuria was holding a baby's hand and pretended not to recognize her close friend. It deeply hurt and surprised the friend, as they had been friends for so many years without any quarrels. Why does she react this way? The whole situation with the baby was also peculiar. Where did the child come from? But the woman soon forgot about it, thinking, why should she bother with someone else's problems? In my opinion, it was Nuria who secretly took the baby during the chaos of the fire. There's no one else it could be. Marcela was puzzled and asked, well, why didn't you ask her about it yourself? Or did you not find her? We need to hear the truth directly from her. Otherwise, we're just speculating and making assumptions. Pero Mendez smirked and replied, well, I did find her. At the cemetery. The woman passed away a long time ago, 5 years ago to be exact. I looked into her medical history, and it was a straightforward case, a stroke. So we won't be able to learn her true motives for her actions, unfortunately. Marcela couldn't hold back and asked anxiously, well then, what about Demetrio? Where does he live? Did he get married or not? Her heart started pounding rapidly. The detective became very serious and contemplative. What the news I'm about to tell you will be very difficult to accept for you. Demetrio passed away a year ago. As you know, he was a passionate motorcyclist and even pursued a career as a stuntman. He married a simple girl who shared his interests, and according to acquaintances, they loved riding together on the night roads with the wind ruffling their hair. Unfortunately, they were involved in a fatal motorcycle accident. Demetrio lost control at high speed and crashed into a pole, resulting in their deaths. However, he left behind a daughter, Milu, who is 3 years old. She is currently in a children's home since there are no remaining relatives for the family. Demetrio's wife was also an orphan. I wrote down the address of the orphanage for you, just in case. It's a truly sad story. Marcela couldn't hear anything further and burst into tears. Just when she had a glimmer of hope to catch a glimpse of her troublemaker, Demetrio, such bitter news struck her. She felt awful and disgusted. I've sat in silence, unsure of how to react to all of this. He had just found a brother and then lost him immediately. He felt deeply sorry for Marcela, but he couldn't find the right words to console her. Wiping away her tears, Marcela quietly said, nevertheless, thank you for everything. It's better to know the bitter truth than to live in ignorance and false hope. I have a day off the day after tomorrow, and I will definitely visit Demetrio's daughter at the orphanage. But for now, I apologize, I need some time alone. Marcela walked home, not paying attention to the path ahead. Tears blurred her vision, and only one thought echoed in her mind, Demetrio is gone. How could this happen? If only their foolish pride hadn't gotten in the way, things could have turned out differently. Why am I so unlucky? I have a job, a place to live, and my parents are healthy, but my personal life never falls into place. I wish I had a child, a little happiness, a solace. But there's no child, and there never will be. I've never gotten pregnant all these years. Marcela worked for another day before finally having a day off. She went to a toy store and bought a beautiful large doll and plenty of sweets. Then she headed to the orphanage. It took her a long and convoluted explanation with the supervisor to convince them of who she was and why she wanted to see the little girl. Initially, the supervisor resisted, stating it wasn't allowed and it would only upset the child. They mentioned that Milu was already emotionally unstable, likely due to the trauma of losing her parents. Marcela couldn't hold back and pleaded. How can't you understand? She's the daughter of my beloved person who died. I want to meet the little girl, get to know her better, and adopt her. I will never have my own children, but I have an apartment and a stable job, so why can't I give happiness to this poor girl? You're a woman, don't you understand how important it is for me to feel like a mother? Otherwise, what's the point of living at all? I've been thinking about adopting a child for a long time, and now this situation has arisen. After all, the girl is not a stranger to me, she's the daughter of my beloved person. Viola Benitez, the elderly woman, felt her heart tremble and instructed to bring the girl to the playroom. Marcela was worried and afraid. What should she say? How should she act? Will the little girl accept her? She had never seen the child before, and it was uncertain how the child would react to a stranger. Suddenly, she heard from behind. Mama? Did you come for me? The astonished woman turned around. A slender little girl reached out to her. She looked so much like Demetrio, the same nose, russet hair, round astonished eyes, and dimples on her cheeks. Everything inside her turned upside down, tears welled up in her eyes, and instinctively she lifted the child into her arms, and the little one trustingly embraced her. Marcela could distinctly hear the beating of the girl's little heart, feel the warmth of her body, and she realized she could no longer part with her. The woman whispered softly to her, "My name is Marcela. I would really love to be your mother, to love you. We would play and draw together, and we would also go to the circus and on carousels." Milu blinked her eyes and pleaded, "Don't leave. Take me away from here. The nanny is mean to me all the time. I don't want to be here." Marcela offered her some gifts. "Here, take this, it's a doll named Tina. She'll stay with you until I take you, and she will protect you. There are also plenty of sweets here, take them, eat." But the little girl pushed the doll away and clung to the woman again, saying, "I don't want the doll. Please don't leave me." And she looked at her with teary eyes. Everything inside Marcela turned upside down, and she felt so sorry for the girl. From this moment on, she already considered the girl as her own. Marcela pleaded with the director, "Please, allow me to take Milu home. My documents are in order, but you understand that the bureaucratic adoption process and numerous checks can take months, and the girl will suffer here all that time. Can't you see that she's not doing well? It's obvious. Don't you have any compassion?" Viola Benitez stood her ground. "I understand everything, and in many ways, you are right. Milu can't adapt here, despite the time that has passed. She is very homebound and avoids contact with people. It's astonishing that she approached you so readily and even called you Mom. I thought she would have a meltdown, as usual. Just recently, another childless couple came to meet her, but Milu ran away, cried, and hid under the table. It seems you bear a strong resemblance to her mother. However, according to the law, I can't give her to you yet. I'm sorry." That's when Marcela made up her mind. She called Ives and briefly explained the situation, begging him to help in any way possible. After all, Milu wasn't a stranger to him, she was his own niece. He immediately responded and told her to wait right there, not to leave. After 15 minutes, the director's office phone rang. She had a long conversation with someone, explaining and justifying herself, looking meaningfully at Marcela. Then she replied, "Well, I didn't know." "Fine, I'll double-check everything." "Yes, I understand, I'll do it, but only as an exception." Then she turned to Marcela. "It seems you have very good connections in the city department. They called me from there and asked me to assist you. Why didn't you say right away that Milu is related to Blanco's son-in-law? We didn't know about that. You can take the little girl, but after all you'll have to go through all the paperwork and adoption procedures." Marcela lifted Milu into her arms and joyfully said, "Well, my dear, shall we go home? That's it, you won't return here anymore." The girl hugged her even tighter around the neck and replied, "I've been waiting for you. I knew you would find me." Nobody believed me. From that day on, Marcela's life took a completely different turn. She took a leave from work and fully immersed herself in taking care of her daughter. From the very first moment, they got along so well that it seemed as if Milu was not an adopted child, but truly her own daughter. Initially, Milu was afraid of loud noises and often cried in her sleep, probably due to her difficult time in the orphanage or the lingering effects of the stress she had experienced. But the time passed, so did it. A month later, Marcela officially adopted Milu, enrolled her in kindergarten, and introduced her to her grandparents. Naturally, Marcela's parents were shocked by her bold decision, but they supported her. This mature and serious little girl, despite her young age, couldn't help but melt their hearts. Milu was truly obedient and wonderful, and Marcela herself had changed beyond recognition. She blossomed, grew younger, her eyes sparkled, and now she had a purpose to hurry, as taking care of her child didn't burden her, but only brought joy. She was now just like any other loving mother. That's why Marcela's mom and dad also happily took care of their granddaughter and looked after her when needed, which greatly helped Marcela, especially when she had to work night shifts. I've started coming over to their house more and more frequently, at first seemingly to spend time with his niece. He brought her sweets and gifts, bought expensive and cute outfits. But Milu persistently refused to call him uncle, instead calling him daddy, as he looked exactly like her father. I've felt both pleased and uneasy at the same time because it wasn't entirely true. He deeply respected Marcela for such a noble act. After all, she was raising his own niece on her own initiative. Their home was always lively and interesting, with the scent of cinnamon and freshly baked goods in the air. Marcela patiently taught Milu letters on building blocks and counting rules. She also read a lot to her. The girl adored listening to fairy tales. Marcela's excess weight had disappeared unnoticed, as she no longer had time to snack or indulge in stress eating. The whole day was scheduled. Marcela and Ives decided to visit Dimitrio's grave at the cemetery. Ives bought flowers, and they set off on their way. They wandered for a while and finally found the grave. Next to Dimitrio's grave was his wife's grave. Marcela looked at the photo and immediately understood why Milu had taken her as her mother. They were very similar, curly brunettes with round cheeks and a similar smile. Even Ives was surprised. "Look, how much the late wife of Dimitrio resembles you. It seems he couldn't forget you and subconsciously found a girl similar to you. It often happens. People love once in their life and then keep looking for someone similar." Marcela stood by her fiancé's grave for a long time. "Well, hello, Dimitrio. Here we are, meeting again. It's a pity that things didn't work out between us. I loved you deeply, and I still do. Even though I know you're no longer here. Don't worry, your little daughter is with me. I adopted Milu from the orphanage, and I'll love and raise her as my own. She's a wonderful girl, my joy, my light at the end of the tunnel. Now, I'm not alone anymore. Thank you, my dear, for those beautiful moments of my youth. They warmed me throughout my life." Ives also spoke softly. "Well, hello, brother. Here we meet. I'm sorry we didn't interact or know each other in life. It wasn't my fault. I knew nothing about you. Our parents, without asking for permission, determined our destinies. But I could have been your friend, communicated with you. From this day on, I will visit and take care of your grave." After a moment of silence, both felt a little lighter in their hearts. Meanwhile, the situation in Ives' family continued to worsen. Susanna turned out to be a lazy and inert girl. She didn't know how to do anything and didn't want to learn how to do it. Accustomed to being capricious from childhood and getting whatever she wanted on a silver platter, she also tried to treat her husband the same way, considering him almost a servant. All one could hear was, "Ives, bring me some water. Not like that. Sparkling. And give me a back massage." When he came home from work, the man hoped for at least a meager dinner, but no, the kitchen table was always empty. When he started to complain, Susanna sincerely protested. "Ives, don't be so annoying. Let's order pizza or go to a restaurant. You know I can't cook at all. You're deliberately starting an argument, aren't you?" The husband was outraged. "Maybe you should get up from the couch and start learning? Enroll in cooking classes. After all, you're not busy all day long." The young wife immediately called her father and complained. "Daddy, Ives is unbearable. He offended your princess again. Can you at least tell him that I won't cook? What else does he want? We can hire a cook, right? At least you understand me." The father gave her an excellent education. She'd been studying design at a prestigious university. But she had no intention of getting any job. Susanna led an idle lifestyle. She slept until noon, then visited beauty salons and fashionable stores with her friends, and by evening, she might condescend to communicate with her husband. She considered Ives to be nobody and simply a pleasant bonus to her luxurious life. She was used to resolving everything with a single call to her powerful daddy and threw tantrums like a child over any little thing. The authoritative father was obsessed with his daughter and blindly indulged her even in the most absurd desires. Moreover, she had no qualms about spending nights at nightclubs with her friends and others. Often, she would come home in an inappropriate state. Ives was nervous, and they argued endlessly. 3 months passed in such unbearable turmoil, and the man's patience snapped. He gathered courage and decided on a divorce. "Susanna, listen. Our marriage was a mistake. You are completely unsuited for married life, and you don't want to have children. I'm tired of your partying and bossy attitude. Let's get a divorce before it's too late. Find yourself another obedient boy. I've never been and will never be one." Susanna pouted her already overly silicone-injected lips and instinctively dialed her father's number. "Daddy. It's a disaster. Ives wants to leave me. What a scoundrel. We're getting a divorce. He doesn't love me. He says I'm lazy and don't want to have children. Come quickly and deal with him." Ives felt bad. He could vividly imagine what was about to happen. Everyone feared Blanco's anger, from the household staff to the employees. The infuriated billionaire rushed over immediately, his eyes bulging, and without understanding the situation, he started shouting like a madman. "What do you think you're doing, son-in-law? Have you completely lost your mind? No one has the right to hurt my daughter. Do you want a divorce? You just got married not long ago. Do you even realize the consequences of your actions? You won't find a beauty like my girl anywhere." Ives was extremely nervous, drenched in sweat, but he decided to go all the way, now or never. "I'm tired of tolerating the escapades and whims of your daughter. And I can live without your millions. I have my beloved job. This is not the kind of family I dreamt of. Susanna has no intention of growing up, working, or having children. So what's the point of us living together? We're getting a divorce, period. I'm not an empty space, as you think, and I won't allow myself to be your doormat and my desires to be ignored." Blanco shook his fist in front of Ives, wanting to throttle the defiant son-in-law, although deep down he knew that Ives was right, and he, as a father, had made a mistake in her upbringing, indulging all her whims. But he had no intention of admitting it aloud, so he menacingly shouted, "Oh, really? Well, get out of here. Just know that I didn't draft a prenuptial agreement for nothing. As I suspected, you won't get a penny. We'll find a replacement for you in no time. Plenty of suitors out there. No one dares to hurt my daughter." Ives let out a sigh. The worst was behind him. Blanco agreed to their divorce and calmly started packing his things in a suitcase. Susanna didn't shed a single tear and continued clicking on her phone. So what if he's leaving? Well, fine. Daddy will find her a new fiancé. Marcela happened to be feeding Milou dinner and telling her a story when the doorbell rang. Strange, who could it be at this time? I'm not waiting for guests, she thought. She opened the door and fell speechless. I've stood at the threshold with a wheeled suitcase. He lowered his gaze and asked softly, "Can I come in?" "I left Susanna. We're getting a divorce." Marcela let the man in without asking any questions. She understood he was already feeling bad. She simply seated him at the table. The hostess reheated a warm potato dish with meat, prepared a simple salad, took out a bottle of wine she had bought some time ago, poured it into glasses, and said, "Let's drink. To let go of all the bad things from our lives and have only good things ahead." Ives looked at her gratefully, took a sip, and enjoyed the delicious meal with enthusiasm. Later, they bathed the little princess together, and she playfully whipped up bubbles in the bathtub and splashed around with a rubber yellow duck. Then they read her a bedtime story and put her to sleep. Ives felt so comfortable and at ease with Marcela, it felt like she and Milou had been a part of his life for a long time. It was precisely the kind of woman he had always dreamt of, one who was sweet, gentle, loved children, and created a cozy home. Marcela stepped out of the shower, looking fresh and rosy, and asked hesitantly, "Ives, where should I make the bed for you?" Her heart was pounding out of her chest because so much depended on his answer. She still didn't fully understand how he felt about her. Did he love her or just pity her? But she was sure of her own feelings. She couldn't help but love Demetrio's brother. Those feelings ran so deep within her. Suddenly, Ives took her hand in his and softly said, "Marcela, I don't know how it happened, but I fell in love with you a long time ago, and now I love Milou too. You are the kind of wife I have always dreamed of. You are the best, believe me, I can compare. Maybe it's fate that both my brother, whom I have never seen, and I fell in love with the same woman. Will you marry me? I feel so good when I'm with you." Marcela reached out to him and timidly kissed him. That was her answer, yes. Unable to contain himself, Ives lifted her up in his arms and carried her to the bedroom. Marcela hadn't felt such intense and beautiful sensations since that night with Demetrio in the countryside. And now, with Ives, it was all happening again. It was simply magnificent. Unlike the impatient and brusque Demetrio, Ives loved her slowly and skillfully. They didn't close their eyes until dawn, completely disconnected from reality. Only when they heard Milou's voice from the children's room, signaling her awakening, did they both jolt. As if they were scalded, and laughing, they began to get dressed. The girl was overjoyed to see Ives at the breakfast table in the morning and asked excitedly, "Yay! Daddy, are you going to live with us all the time now? You won't go anywhere?" The man barely held back tears and replied, "No, my sweetheart, I'm not going anywhere. Now, let's eat your porridge quickly. Daddy will take you to kindergarten, otherwise Mommy will be late for work." Marcela watched as Ives proudly led Milou by the hand, prepared sandwiches for him to take to work, kissed him goodbye, and thought to herself, "Finally, I have a real and happy family." What a happiness it turned out to be. Taking care of someone, loving them, and knowing it's mutual. A year passed, everything fell into place, and Milou adored her parents. Marcela and Ives lived very harmoniously. Lately, Ives had been concerned about his wife. She was very nervous, exhausted, easily irritated, and would cry over trivial things, mostly in secret so he wouldn't see. She had also started gaining weight significantly and, without even realizing it, was eating almost every half hour. Ives thought it might be due to overwork at her job, but just in case, he decided to persuade her to see a doctor. "Marcela, I think you should consult a doctor. Something is happening with you. I can see it. Maybe they'll prescribe some calming pills. Or take a vacation, let's go somewhere together, just 3 of us," he suggested. The woman felt offended and snapped. "Ives, I am a doctor myself with years of practice. Why should I go anywhere? I know better what's happening to me. Or are you unhappy that I gained weight again? I'm genetically predisposed to be overweight. I have a metabolic disorder, and you know it perfectly well. Why do you push this button once again?" And suddenly, she burst into tears. For some reason, she felt deeply hurt, and it seemed like Ives was deliberately provoking her. But when she finished her 4th sandwich during her breaks between calls, Zenaida couldn't hold back any longer. "Marcela, you should see a gynecologist. I'm no expert, but I've been watching you for the past month, and I see myself 5 years ago. I was eating everything in sight and crying all the time too. It seems to me you're pregnant." Marcela choked on her tea. "Zenaida, don't be ridiculous. I can't have a baby. It's simply impossible. Although, no, it can't be. Oh, just a second, I'll run to the pharmacy. 5 minutes, and we're leaving." In the evening, Marcela locked herself in the bathroom and didn't come out for a long time. Ives grew worried and told Milou to draw on her own for a while before going to check on Marcela. He knocked on the door and called out, "Darling, is everything okay in there? You've been gone for a while, and Milou and I are getting worried. Please open the door." Marcela opened the door and silently showed her husband the pregnancy test. There were 2 bright lines on it. She kept insisting, almost in disbelief. "I don't believe it. This simply cannot be. Maybe it's a hormonal imbalance. Sometimes false positives happen. Besides, I've had issues with this since my youth." Ives grabbed her and started spinning her around. "Oh my God, Marcela. Is this really true? Tomorrow we're going to the doctor. I want to hear it myself." The next day, they were at the gynecologist. The doctor examined Marcela and took her for an ultrasound, and her husband didn't lag behind, afraid to miss the most important moment. The elderly doctor whistled as he looked at the screen. "Wow, my dear. You've waited quite a while. It's already 16 weeks. It's high time you got on regular checkups. You're a medical professional yourself, yet you're so negligent about your own health. The pregnancy is progressing normally, and it's a boy. Congratulations. Get registered, and we'll monitor your progress." Marcela burst into tears, unable to control herself. She trembled as if she had a fever. The astonished gynecologist asked again, "What's wrong with you? Aren't you happy with this news? Why do you cry? The baby is perfectly fine. I see no abnormalities. Calm down. It's just your hormones acting up. I'll prescribe some medication to soothe your nerves," the woman explained in a trembling voice. "No, I am happy. I just can't believe it. I didn't even suspect I was pregnant. I thought it was a hormonal imbalance. I have such episodes sometimes. I've struggled with infertility my whole life. I had given up hope for a miracle. Thank you, doctor." He smiled and said, "Well, it's not thanks to me. Thank your husband. He made an effort. It often happens that miracles occur when you least expect them." Ives was almost jumping with joy. He wanted to sing and dance. Inside, everything was rejoicing. Hooray! He would soon become a father. His long-cherished dream was coming true. Especially since it was a boy, an heir. He didn't dare to dream of such a thing. He hugged his wife and happily announced, "That's it. From this day on, it's a gentle routine for you. Switch to easy work, just in case. We won't take any risks with the baby. I won't be able to handle it if anything happens. What do you want right now? Marcela laughed. I feel good, don't worry, darling. I just have an endless appetite. I'll get fat, turn into a chubby. The doctor advised me to buy fruits, raisins with nuts, and snack on them to avoid gaining too much weight. But I've said, eat whatever you want. I will love you no matter what. By the way, your fullness doesn't spoil anything, honestly. Stop worrying about it. You only become more appetizing. In the evening, they cautiously started preparing Milu for the news. Sweetheart, we have good news. Soon, you'll have a little brother. Are you happy? They asked. The little girl pondered for a moment and became serious. Well, I don't know. Will he take away my toys? Will you stop loving me? What will he be like? Boys at kindergarten are so annoying. Can't we exchange him for a sister before it's too late? Maybe we can get a girl instead? Where is he now? Is he in your belly? I know everything. Marcela burst into laughter and began to explain. No, Milu, we can't change anything now, unfortunately. Don't worry, we won't love you any less. You're our beloved daughter. The two of us will play mommy and daughter, bathe, and feed the baby together. And when he grows up, he'll be friends with you. Milu sighed and replied, Well, okay then, let it be a boy since we can't change anything. Marcela went to her parents' house with Milu and shared the news of her pregnancy. Her mother cried, congratulated her, and embraced her daughter. Everyone was happy and delighted that a bright period had finally begun in her life. They loved Milu dearly and were excited about the upcoming arrival of their grandchild. The pregnancy progressed smoothly without complications. Marcela continued working until the last moment because saving lives was her true calling. I've simply adored his round and cheerful wife. She became so endearing and funny, walking and rolling from side to side all the time and constantly eating. At the expected due date, a true little warrior came into the world. They named their son Mateo, at Milu's request, after her boyfriend from kindergarten. When they brought the baby home, she carefully examined Mateo, gently touching his chubby little hand. Then, in a businesslike manner, she said, Not bad, little brother. I liked you. You look like the doll from kindergarten. But what will we do when he starts crying? Marcela laughed and said, We'll give him a pacifier and sing him lullabies and cradle him. Milu became scared and said, Oh, but I don't know any lullabies. I'll go and learn. Ives was absolutely proud and happy. He rushed home from work, delightedly took walks with his son, bathed him, and couldn't be happier. One day, the millionaire Blanco, stuck in traffic at an intersection, saw the whole happy family together. He recognized his former son-in-law. Ives proudly pushed the stroller, and a plain, plump woman, who held the hand of a 5-year-old girl, was walking by his side. They were all laughing, chatting, and eating ice cream. The man cursed and enviously watched them, thinking to himself, such a son-in-law. My foolish Susanna. Years go by, and what do I have to show for it? He has a real family, children, and what do I have? A crazy daughter who has been spiraling downwards, indulging in drugs multiple times, and there's no sign of grandchildren. There were always some thugs hanging around her, paying her compliments for money, but there was no talk of a proper relationship. I'll die and won't see my grandchildren. I spoiled Susanna for nothing, oh, how foolish. And yet, what did I see in that ordinary, chubby nurse? I can't understand. Susanna is much more beautiful. Little did he know that true happiness isn't in millions or long legs and a pretty face. The inner world of a person matters much more. A kind soul and a compassionate heart will always find their way to happiness, discovering it in the simplest, everyday things.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.